up by 2 nationwide. And that's CNN. How about the Missouri Scout Bowl? Up by 9 points in the state of Missouri. But we cannot afford to get overconfident. We have to turn out the vote in the 7th District of Missouri. Everyone knows you're going to win statewide. You have to turn out the vote here. We need your help. We need you to work on that with us. When I first went to Washington, I went in with a group of 87 freshman Republicans. We thought we could really get things done. 87. We took the gavel from Nancy Pelosi, handed it over to John Boehner. You're there about 10 days, and you realize you don't have the White House, you don't have the Senate, you don't have hardly anything. We are going to have the White House with Trump and Pence this year. Before I introduce my buddy, just one quick story. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal today quoting Jeff Rowe, who ran Ted Cruz's campaign. He also ran my campaign. He was my general consultant in 2010. When I got elected, I called people in D.C. to staff up. I had 3 chief of staff candidates fly into Springfield on their own nickel to talk about being my chief of staff. Started talking to legislative directors, legislative assistants. I get a call from Jeff Rowe. What are you doing hiring all this staff? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you don't need a bunch of ledge staff. I said, why? Why not? I said, we want to read the bills. They always sneak stuff in there, hide it. We want to make sure we do a good job. He said, Billy, all you need to do is walk in there on the House floor. Now, this is 6 years ago. Keep this in mind. Walk in there on the House floor, look up on the wall, and see how Mike Pence is voting, and vote like Mike. He was a stalwart for pro-life, Second Amendment, a great, great guy. It is my honor, and give him an Ozarks welcome. Welcome to Governor Mike Pence.
Wow, what a great crowd. Thank you so much to my dear friend, Congressman Billy Long, one of the great conservative voices on Capitol Hill. Billy and I have known each other a while. We served for a little bit of time, and I prefer is a little bit short, and a Republican in that order. And it's just amazing to me that a little more than 6 weeks ago, I accepted my party's nomination, humbly accepted my party's nomination, not just to run, but to serve as the next Vice President of the United States of America. And I want to tell you, I joined this campaign in a heartbeat, because you have nominated a man for president that I have come to know personally. He is a man who loves this country, who believes in a boundless future for the American people. He is a fighter. He is a winner. And until very recently, it seemed like he was out there fighting on his own. But now this movement is coming together. This party is coming together. And we're going to elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States of America. And you just heard Billy say it. This campaign is winning hearts and minds every day. The momentum is palpable. Yesterday we were in Canfield, Pennsylvania. We dropped by a county fair, and there looked to be about 50,000 people that came out to see Donald Trump. Today, ahead by 9 in the latest poll here in Missouri. And even CNN reported today that Donald Trump is in the lead. That had to hurt. You know, people ask me all the time, they say, well, what is it about Donald Trump, now that you've gotten to know him a little bit? And I just tell them, I think the appeal of the man is that Donald Trump just gets it, right? I mean, he's the genuine article. He's a doer in a game usually reserved for talkers. And when Donald Trump does his talking, he doesn't go tiptoeing around those thousands of rules of political correctness that the media lays in the path of men and women who want to make a difference. He tells it like it is, straight from his heart, straight from his mind, and the American people hear him loud and clear. You know, the funny thing is, the party in power just seems helpless to figure out our nominee. And of course, I'm talking about the media. I mean, seriously, the media and the Democrats they all think the usual methods are going to work against Donald Trump, don't they? I mean, they spend more time talking about what he said or tweeted in the last 30 minutes than they do talking about what the Clintons have been up to for the last 30 years. But the American people see right through it. It just is amazing. I mean, it's so funny to me because it's like they say, you can just see late night on TV, you'll see the little panels, everybody's all talking to each other, and then they go, we got him this time. This is it. This is the one that's going to do him in. And then you turn the TV on the next morning, and Donald Trump is still standing stronger than ever before, fighting for the American people, and he's going to fight all the way to the White House on November the 8th. And he's fighting because this team really is coming together. It's coming together around a lot of great people like the congressman who introduced me. Coming together around the great people here in Missouri. And I know he can't be here today because he's serving you in Washington, D.C. But can I just ask you on behalf of Donald Trump and me, let's send Roy Blunt back to the United States Senate with a landslide of support. And for heaven's sakes, Missouri, it's time for strong, conservative, Republican leadership in the governor's office. We need to elect Eric Greitens as the next governor. As the next governor of the state of Missouri. Would you give him a rousing round of applause? This man has served this country in uniform, and now he's going to serve as your great governor. Thank you, Eric. Thanks so much for being here. You know, these great leaders and Donald Trump understand the people of this great state and understand the people of this country. In the case of my running mate, I can promise you, he's never forgotten the men and women who built this country. He's a builder himself. And to be around him in casual conversations, you hear the language of a builder. Someone who has never forgotten the men and women who work with their hands, who build our roads and bridges, who grow our food, who tend to our sick, who teach our kids. And I'll promise you this, Donald Trump will never forget or fail to stand with the men and women of law enforcement in the United States of America. You know, we got a fair amount of law enforcement. How much we appreciate them and the sacrifices they and their family make to protect ours. You know, as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States of America, Donald Trump is going to support our law enforcement at every level with the resources they need to protect our families and go home safe to theirs. In a time of great challenge, in many larger communities, particularly across this country, and in small towns beset by the rise of illicit trade and drug abuse, Donald Trump is going to be a president that will restore law and order to every city and every town in this nation. You know, it really is pretty amazing. At the very moment when America is crying out for something new and different, the other party has come forward with a stale agenda and the most predictable of names. People in both parties are restless for change, ready to break free from a failed establishment in Washington, D.C. Yet the other party actually nominated someone who literally personifies everything that this country's tired of out of our nation's capital. So let's just decide right here and now, in the great state of Missouri, that for all the reasons I will remind you of in the rest of this town hall, let's decide here and now that Hillary Clinton will never be elected President of the United States of America. You know, I really believe, and I'm grateful that you all are here. I'm going to slide to your questions in just a little bit. But I think it's important for us to pay more careful attention to what we already know. Donald Trump and I believe this election comes down to really just a few basic things. It comes down to security and prosperity, the Supreme Court of the United States, and it comes down to making sure that we maintain the highest standards of integrity in the highest office in the land. That's what this is about. So let's start with the first. 7.5 years of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's leadership on the international stage has weakened America's place in the world. It really is extraordinary to think of it. Terrorist attacks at home and abroad, grim and heartbreaking scenes in our allies, attempted coups. It seems if you look at a map of the wider Middle East from 2009 when they took office and she became Secretary of State, and look at a map today, you can barely recognize it. It truly feels some days like parts of the world are just spinning apart. You know, history teaches us that weakness arouses evil. And I would submit to you, Donald Trump and I believe that the weak foreign policy of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, leading from behind, moving red lines, feigning resets with Russia, the rise, rule, and reign of history. You know, I heard that a little bit later today, Hillary Clinton's running mate is going to be making a speech in North Carolina on her record on national security and on foreign affairs. What a coincidence. So am I. I mean, seriously, folks, it was Hillary Clinton's record on foreign affairs that helped undo all the extraordinary gains that we made in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I remember those challenging days in 2006. I remember a president who decided to surge forces, a president who believed that our troops could secure Iraq. And then the American soldier did. And when Iraq was handed over to this administration, it was stable and secure. Can we show our thanks to all the men and women who have served in the uniform? And Barack Obama, who, through their decision to precipitously withdraw troops from Iraq, created the very vacuum in which the appalling terrorist, murderous organization of ISIS was able to rise, virtually conjured up. Murderous organization of ISIS was able to rise, virtually conjured up terrorist agreement with the radical mullahs in Iran. On the day that Iran released 4 American hostages, this administration delivered a pallet with $400 million in cash as a ransom payment for Americans violating years and decades of policy in the United States. When Donald Trump becomes President of the United States of America, United States of America, we won't be paying ransom to terrorist sponsoring states or terrorists. They'll be paying a price if they threaten the American people or our allies or our citizens. And lastly, it was Hillary Clinton and her record on foreign affairs, included that day that transpired on the anniversary of 9/11 in Benghazi. It was Hillary Clinton's State Department who left Americans in harm's way, then told the very parents of the fallen that it had something to do with a video
and only weeks later would concede that it was a terrorist attack. And when confronted on it before the Senate, Hillary Clinton said, and I quote, "What difference at this point does it make?" Well, as the proud father of a United States Marine, let me say this from my heart. Anyone who said that, anyone who did that, should be disqualified from ever serving as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States of America. Okay? I mean, the truth is, despite traveling millions of miles as our Secretary of State, the world is more dangerous today than the day that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton took over our foreign policy. Our allies are less secure. Our enemies are more emboldened. It's not just Iran, but walking away from our most cherished ally, Israel, appeasing Russia, squandering the gains in Iraq, and the list goes on. Now, last week, her running mate described Donald Trump's meeting with the president of Mexico as a, quote, diplomatic amateur hour. Even though it was universally praised, as Donald Trump showed you can have broad shoulders and still stand with grace and poise on the international stage. But they called it a diplomatic amateur hour. Well, let me say, the truth is, it's been amateur hour on the world stage for the last 7.5 years, and the American people and our allies and those who defend our freedom know it. Maybe that's why today I'm proud to say 88 retired generals and admirals endorsed Donald Trump as the next Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America. They know what the American people know, that Donald Trump will rebuild our military, he will stand by our allies, he will stand up to our enemies, and America again will command the respect of the world for the safety of us all. We cannot have 4 more years apologizing to our enemies and abandoning our friends. America needs to be strong for the world to be safe. And Donald Trump will lead on the world stage with strength. Now, the record at home, though, is just as bad. The truth of the matter is that here in Missouri and all over this country, whatever progress we've been able to make since the Great Recession has been made in spite of the policies coming out of Washington, D.C., not because of them. We're in the midst of the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression. We have the lowest labor participation rate since the 1970s. You know, yesterday Donald Trump and I were traveling across the great state of Ohio and celebrating Labor Day with a lot of good, hard-working Americans, including a lot of great members of labor unions there in the state of Ohio. And it was really just incredible. It's incredible to think the lowest labor participation rate, millions of Americans on the sidelines no longer looking for work. It doesn't show up in the unemployment numbers because the unemployment rate only shows unemployment among people that are actively seeking work. And probably most heartbreaking of all, there are nearly 7 million more Americans living in poverty today than the day that Barack Obama became president of the United States. Hillary Clinton's answer to all of that? It's more of the same. More taxes, more spending, more Obamacare, more of the same war on coal and energy that's been waged by this administration from day one. Hillary Clinton's calling for more than $1 trillion in tax increases and more than $1 trillion in new spending at a time that America is inching ever closer to $20 trillion in debt that we're going to put on the shoulders of our children and our grandchildren. When she was asked the other day how she was going to pay for all these new big government programs, she said this, quote, "I'll tell you how we're going to pay for it. We're going to go where the money is. We're going after the super wealthy. We're going after the corporations. We're going after Wall Street." Close quote. Well, she certainly knows where all those things are. I mean, the truth of the matter is, Truth of the matter is, as Margaret Thatcher said many years ago, the problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. You know, the truth is, you hear those rosy speeches and you hear them up on the platform talking about how things are good in America, and people here in Missouri and people across this country know a little bit different. They tell us this economy is the best that we can do, but we know better. It's nowhere near the best that we can do. It's just the best they can do. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States of America, we're going to unleash the boundless energy of the American economy and put Americans back to work. Donald Trump has a plan. Donald Trump has a plan to reignite the American economy through tax reform, rolling back red tape, trade reform, and energy reform. Cutting taxes across the board for people in Missouri, lowering taxes for working families, small businesses, and family farms, ending death taxes once and for all, and we're going to lower business taxes in this country so that companies in Missouri can create jobs in Missouri and keep them in the United States of America. And Donald Trump is committed to rolling back red tape in this country. You know, there's two kinds of taxation coming out of Washington, D.C. One is the kind of taxation that takes money out of your pocket and decides how to spend it, and the other is you pass a regulation and tell businesses and individuals how they got to spend their own money, right? I mean, regulation is a form of taxation. And on day one, Donald Trump's going to do what we did back in the Hoosier State, what I know Eric Greitens is going to do when he arrives in Missouri, and that is Donald Trump is going to freeze all new federal regulation and repeal every Obama executive order that's stifling jobs in this economy. And I'll tell you what, when Donald Trump becomes negotiator-in-chief, that term's not in the Constitution. Yet. When Donald Trump becomes negotiator-in-chief, I promise you, this clear-eyed business leader is going to step out on the world stage just like he did last week. We're going to renegotiate NAFTA so that it supports jobs in the United States of America. We're going to get out of these multinational deals like TPP, and we're going to have trade that works for the American worker once and for all. And lastly, Donald Trump and I both believe that the strength of this nation is found in our people, in their character, and in their faith, and in their freedom. But it's also found here in Missouri and all across America in the vast natural resources of this nation. And I promise you, on day one of a Trump administration, Donald Trump will end the war on coal and unleash the boundless energy of the American energy economy. Now, a lot of economists think that's going to make a real difference. There are economists out there that see that the ideas that were last put into effect back in the early 1980s and caused the longest peacetime expansion since World War II are going to do that again. But Hillary Clinton actually said she thought that optimistic projections about the economy were, quote, wildly unrealistic. Okay? Well, the only thing wildly unrealistic is the idea that you can elect the same people with the same bad ideas and expect a different result. Donald Trump and I know for a different result in America, we need different leadership with new ideas, and that's going to come from a President Donald Trump. And two more things before I get to your questions, and I'm anxious to hear what's on your mind. First and foremost, I figured that was. First and foremost, you know, we're electing a president for the next 4 years on November the 8th, but that president is probably going to set the course and direction of the Supreme Court of the United States for the next 40 years. That's something we need to think about. Truth of the matter is, elect Hillary Clinton and you better get used to being subject to more unelected judges using unaccountable power to make unconstitutional decisions. Legislating from the bench, which is the model of the liberal jurist in the Supreme Court and all across our federal judiciary today. So I want to say to each one of you, as you leave here today and talk to neighbors and friends in the days that remain, I think 62 days between now and Election Day, remind them of this. If you care about our Constitution, limited government, the rule of law, the sanctity of life, the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, you care about all the God-given liberties that are enshrined in the founding documents of the United States of America, then we must decide here and now in Missouri that the next president making appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States is President Donald Trump. So it's about security. Men and women in Missouri, it's about security, it's about prosperity and jobs, and it's about the Supreme Court of the United States. But it's also about making sure that we have the highest standards of integrity in the highest office in the land. And just been a remarkable several weeks. Just a cascade of controversies, one revelation after another coming out of details released about the Clinton Foundation. I mean, Hillary Clinton said she had turned over all of her emails except for the ones having to do with yoga and wedding plans. Now we have found more than 15,000 additional emails dealing with national security, even classified information that was allowed to be on her own private server, exposed to hacking. I mean, I have to be honest with you, I'm experiencing Clinton scandal fatigue. But there is a cure. There is a cure for Clinton scandal fatigue, and that is electing Donald Trump as the next president of the United States of America. But the avalanche of facts, we find out that 85 of the 154 meetings that she gave to private individuals while she was Secretary of State were given to people who'd given tens of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. We found out that she used a high-tech software program called BleachBit to clean her server, literally after it had been revealed in the New York Times that she had a private email system. I mean, this is really extraordinary if you think about it. Here's your timeline. March 2nd, 2015, the New York Times reported the existence of her private email system. March 4th, 2015, the House Benghazi Committee subpoenaed emails from that system. March 9th, 2015, what's called a preservation request was sent to the Platte River Networks, the company handling her private server. March 25th, they held a conference call with her staff, and sometime between March 25th and March 31st of 2015, an employee of that company wiped her email server with that high-tech BleachBit program, deleting all of her emails. It is extraordinary to think about it, men and women. You know, it was a long time ago when I was still a boy that I remember a president who deleted 18 and a half minutes of tape. It was held accountable for that. And now Hillary Clinton deleted almost 18,000 emails. That doesn't look like politics, folks. That looks like obstruction. And the American people are sick and tired of it. We must have the highest standards of integrity in the highest office in the land. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, the days of this rigged system for the favored few will come to a crashing end. He will uphold the highest standards of integrity in the highest office in the land, and his only special interest will be you, the American people. You know, let me close with just a quick thought. I mean, I hope you came here today to be reminded of why you're a part of this movement. I hope you came here today to hear a word of encouragement. But I hope you leave here today with a burden on your heart to go tell somebody here in Springfield, to reach out to a neighbor and a friend and talk to them about the stakes in this election, the stakes of our security, our prosperity, our Supreme Court, and our high standards and expectations. But I hope you also say one other thing, and I think it's been in high relief just in the last few weeks. And that is, I hope you'll communicate to people not just the choice in this election, which couldn't be more dramatic. I hope you'll communicate to people in this election that we have in Donald Trump and his running mate from Indiana a couple of people that really believe in our heart of hearts that there will always be more in this country that unites us in these United States of America than will ever divide us. I mean, when you hear Donald Trump speak passionately about his vision for this country, we both come by it honestly. We both have literally, in our families, in just 2 short generations, we've seen the American dream unfold in unique and in different ways, but it's been the American dream. I mean, both of our grandfathers immigrated to this country. Both of them helped build businesses and raise great families. His dad was a self-made man who started in the building business, and my dad was a self-made man who grew up in Chicago, took that immigrant's daughter down to a little town in southern Indiana, bought a house with a cornfield in the backyard, and built a little gas station business down there. And Donald Trump and I were both believed the tomb, much is given, much will be required. And so for him, it meant, the kid from Queens, it meant going to Manhattan Island, building some of the biggest buildings in the world, and a name known across the country and across the world. And for me, it was a calling into public service. I mean, truthfully, other than a whole bunch of zeros, he and I have an awful lot in common. I mean, a whole bunch. But we both lived the American dream. We really did. We were blessed to be raised in great families. We were blessed to have a foundation of faith in our life, and blessed to believe very simply that anybody can be anybody in this country. And so I hope as you go out from this place in Missouri and you talk to your neighbors and friends, we've got to draw the line. We've got to say to people, this is a binary choice in this election, okay? All right? We got to say to people, you're either going to choose a leader who's going to take America back to strength at home and abroad, uphold our Constitution, uphold the rule of law, and uphold the highest standards, or we're going to have more of the same failed policies that have weakened America's place in the world, stifled our economy, and walked away from our constitutional traditions and our standards. We got to lay that choice out, but I hope we also say that when you see it on that hat, make America great again. It's a message that includes every single person in this country. It's a message that says Donald Trump and I believe we can bring the American dream back for every American, regardless of race or creed or color, and bring prosperity and opportunity to every family in this nation once again. Okay? So the choice cannot be more clear. So I prepare to run to your questions here. We can elect someone who literally personifies a failed establishment in Washington, D.C., or we can elect a leader who will fight for the American people to make America great again. Here's your choice, in case you're taking notes. If you want a president who will protect this nation, rebuild our military, stand with those in uniform, stand with our allies, stand up to our enemies, and hunt down and destroy the terrorist elements in the world who threaten our people and threaten our freedom. If you want a president who will stand with our law enforcement community in America and give them the support they need and deserve to restore law and order to every city and every town in this nation. If you want a president who will cut taxes, grow this economy, squeeze every nickel out of that bloated federal bureaucracy and repeal Obamacare lock, stock, and barrel. If you want a president who will build a wall on our southern border, secure this nation, enforce our laws, remove criminal aliens, establish an E-Verify system, and make the center of this debate the American citizen and the people who are in this nation legally. And if you want a president who will appoint justices, who will uphold the Constitution, and if you want a president who will upend the status quo in Washington, D.C., then my message to you is this. To you and your neighbors and your friends, we only have one choice if you want all of that. And I promise you, that man is ready. This team is ready. This movement is ready. Let's go make sure Missouri is ready, and we will elect Donald Trump as the 45th President of the United States of America. And with his leadership, we will make America great again. Well, thanks for letting me get that off my chest. Now, I got to tell you, I really do believe that. I really believe, as I travel around the country, I was campaigning with Donald Trump yesterday in Ohio and campaigning for Donald Trump across this country. I think it's important that we pay more attention to what we've already learned, and we focus on the real stakes in this election. So I hope there's something in that that's reminded you, but I hope there's something in that that you leave here today inspired to go tell somebody. And I'll say that again before I leave. With that, slide your hand in the air. I'd love to hear your first name. Right over here. This young lady in the stripes. Got a guy coming down. Wait for the microphone.
Here I come. I'm behind you.
I play my country music a little too loud, so I need you to hold the mic. Yes,
Hi there.
What's your
My
name?
name is Cindy,
Hi,
and
Cindy.
I am from the most Republican state in the Union, Idaho. And because we know that Idaho belongs to President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, my husband and I have come out here for 8 weeks to work for your election.
Thank you so much.
So, in hopes of being able to ask a question, I gave my question to my firstborn, my son, West Point graduate, Apache Top Gun in Iraq. He commanded all of the Gray Eagle drones in Afghanistan and was sent to Saudi Arabia for a year. And his question to you, sir, is the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates artificially low for the past 8 years, building extremely large economic bubbles. For example, our housing market, which affects all of us in this room.
Right.
Should the Federal Reserve raise the interest rates as it must when President Trump is in office? How do you guys, the two of you, propose to minimize the economic stagnation a rate hike will cause and minimize the damage from the burst bubbles for all of us in this room?
What's your son's name and rank?
He's Captain Joseph DeFrancesco, and he's from the U.S. Army, of course.
Give it up for Captain Joseph DeFrancesco, will you? Wow, what a great question. Well, tell Captain Francesco two things. Number one, thanks for his service. We just couldn't be more grateful, and I know you couldn't be more proud. I know it. Secondly, it's really a very good question, and it was one that Donald Trump and I were talking yesterday about. I mean, there's no question that the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates low for so long, and it is one of the reasons that the only thing really prospering in this economy is Wall Street and the stock market. I mean, the stock market is doing great, and that comes from, as Donald has said many times, that essentially comes from that artificially low interest rate. Because the truth of the matter is that as we talk about this economy, the real numbers are not the Wall Street numbers and what's going on in your 401k, although I'm happy for that, you're happy for that. And it's not, the real numbers are not even the unemployment rate. here in Missouri or in the state of Indiana. We've made progress in our unemployment rate, but it's that labor participation rate. It's the number of people that are out of this economy. I mean, there are millions and millions of able-bodied men and women in this country who are just not even looking for work right now. And the labor participation rate that I talked about a little bit earlier is where we really need to focus, as well as the poverty rate. 7 million more Americans living below the poverty line today than when Barack Obama took office. The antidote to that, and before you ever get to the question of raising interest rates, is we've got to increase the prosperity of the American people by allowing the American people to keep more of what you earn, not less. Donald Trump is calling for tax reform, tax relief, regulatory reform, and repealing Obamacare. I think I just saw the stories today. Obamacare, when I was in the Congress, I fought every day against Obamacare. You'll never convince me. You'll never convince me that the cure for what ails our healthcare economy was to order every American to buy health insurance, whether they want it or need it or not. Right? And now these Obamacare exchanges are literally failing all over the country. The ironic thing about all of that, you talk about a burden on our economy, when Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker of the House, was pushing Obamacare and went to the House floor the day it passed and said, we need to pass the bill so we can find out what's in it. Anybody remember that? We found out. But with how they sold it was going to lower the cost of health insurance for working Americans and small businesses and family farms. It's increased it dramatically. And here in the months of September, we're going to get those new rates out, and you're going to see what a disaster this is. So what Donald Trump and I are going to do is focus on growth. We're going to focus on jobs. We're going to focus on tax reform, regulatory reform, repealing Obamacare, ending the war on coal. And when you get this economy moving again, that's when you have a conversation about interest rates with the Federal Reserve and let them float back to a more nominal place in a free market economy. But you've got to have the growth first. And that's where we're going to focus. But give the captain my best. How about over here? Got somebody back there? Yeah, go right ahead. Yes, sir. What's your name?
My name is Ed.
Hi, Ed.
Hi. Thank you for coming to Southwest Missouri. It's been a very good experience so far. I think I speak for a lot of the silent majority by saying we're very angry and frustrated with the leadership that's been very arrogant and ignorant to what we're needing as Americans, number one. Number two, and with the Clintons who've been above and beyond any law I've ever seen and continue to be because no one cares what they do. So up to this point, it's not who am I voting for, but who am I voting against, because I've been challenged by some of the things I've quite honestly heard from our Republican candidate. But today, I have a strong feeling of I'm now voting for this party because of what you have said. Now,
thank you, Ed. Thank you. I'm humbled by that.
Here's my question.
Yes, sir.
Can you promise us as much as possible that you have this gentleman's ear and attention to help him present himself in a light to where we can respect and honor and move forward for a president as opposed to against the Clintons? Thank you.
Ed, thank you very much. Thank you for your kindness and your candor. What I would tell you is, number one, the American people do care about what's going on the other side. It may not make it into the nightly network news till about 15 minutes after, but the American people expect the highest standards of integrity in the highest office in the land, and this movement is going to see to that. I believe it with all my heart. The American people are paying attention. And what I would just tell you is everything you heard from me, those are the positions that Donald Trump has articulated to me and with me. I mean, I think I said it at the Republican National Convention. Donald Trump he's bigger than life. He's known all over the world. He's a charismatic figure, so obviously they wanted to balance the ticket. Right? Less zeros, less charm. But I want to tell you that we both, one of the reasons that we've become such good friends in such a short period of time is because we really share a common vision and common goals for this country. And I just want to tell you, if everything you heard here today has gotten you to that place, be confident. The agenda I said today is the Donald Trump agenda, and I believe this good man will be a great president of the United States of America. I say it from my heart. Say that from my heart. Thank you for the question. Hi.
Governor Pence, we have time for one additional question.
Okay.
Hi, Governor Mike Pence. My name's Kathy,
Hi,
and I
Kathy.
want to thank you for caring about we the people. And I also want to ask you, I've heard and I've read about the Clinton emails, and I heard you talk about it briefly, and I'd like to know how it threatens our security, if you would.
Yeah, it's great. What's your first name again? Kathy?
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. Thanks for calling me Mike, too. I don't know. Yeah. I'm from Indiana. We don't go on the... Yeah, you got the governor thing in. That was fine. So, but I prefer Mike. Kathy, I think you really raise a very good question, because it really goes to judgment. It really goes to judgment. I know that she, at some point when the email, it was hard to keep up the last few weeks, wasn't it? With everything unfurling and cascading out of the revelations in these emails. But the revelation, and the New York Times, give them a lot of credit. The New York Times was the first to report that she had a private server. Those of you that aren't too high tech, which would include me, she didn't have like an AOL account or something. She had a private server system, and she used that private server, now we know, to handle what was classified information. There was information that came out in the last week that there was information on potential drone strikes. We now know also that there was information on Benghazi in these emails that have not been yet made public. But the point of your question is a very profound one, and that is, how did that threaten our national security? Because this really goes to judgment. Because I hear the other side talk a lot about judgment, a lot about temperament. I can tell you what, I promise you, Donald Trump is a man who has broad shoulders and the judgment to be a great president of the United States of America. I'm just going to tell you that. I'm around him all the time. Okay? We talk, Donald Trump, this is back to Ed for a second. Donald Trump and I talk every day, already talk today, we talk sometimes twice a day. And so I'm just telling you that. But the second thing is about the judgment issue. By putting emails that were marked classified, okay, when I was in Congress, Billy Long over there is in Congress. I mean, anytime that we're presented classified information, you have to like sign a document that makes it clear that you know it's classified information and you're going to handle it sensitively, right? And to find out that she had, I think, almost a dozen different BlackBerry devices, most of which were destroyed, to find out that she had a private email server that could be subject to being hacked by foreign powers to get that information. Even the FBI director, in not bringing or recommending charges, said that she was extremely careless. And frankly, anyone else working at the State Department or in this government who mishandled classified information of that nature would be denied access to classified material and would likely be facing the judgment of the law. They would. So that's where the exposure was, Kathy. And people just need to know that. People need to be aware of that. And people need to be aware that that's part of the record. That's part of the record of the Democrat nominee that needs to be before the American people. So let me say thanks. He already called it last call, so I actually have to fly over to St. Louis and then back to Indianapolis tonight. And I get to sleep in my own bed tonight. That's a good thing. What I want to tell all of you is two things. I want to tell you two things. Number one is, if you've heard something here in these thoughtful questions or in our conversation that's inspired you or encouraged you, go tell somebody. Go tell somebody. And I'm talking about, tell them at work, tell them at worship, tell them outside the drugstore, tell them over the backyard fence, right? I mean, just pull somebody aside and just say, hey, I just want you to know why I'm voting for Donald Trump and Mike Pence. And what I think the stakes are: prosperity, security, okay, the Supreme Court, and high standards in public life. And the last thing I'd say to all of you, this is a little more personal for me, and that is, if you're of a mind to bend the knee from time to time, this would be a good time to do it. And can I say, I'm not asking you to pray for one candidate or another. I just encourage you to pray for our country. It's a challenging time in the life of our nation. We seem to be more divided than ever at home. The world seems more dangerous than ever before. But the people of this country have faced much more challenging times. The people of Missouri have faced it with courage, and they faced it with faith. And when I think about the challenges that we face and the divisions that we have, I can't help but think of that ancient verse that says, if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, that he'll hear from heaven and heal their land. It's been true before. I know he'll do it again. So I encourage you to do that. And I thank you very much for your time today, and God bless you. Let's drive to a great victory in Missouri and a great victory for all the people of Indiana. Thank you all.